Okay, so have you ever heard of metal bending without any heat or pressure, or even weirder, objects just sort of merging together? It sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? But that's exactly what we're diving into today, the Hutchison effect. It just might make you rethink what you thought was possible.
Yeah, the Hutchison effect, it's a whole bunch of strange electromagnetic things that a researcher named John Hutchison observed way back in the 1980s. We're talking levitation, metal bending in ways it shouldn't, even objects just subtly breaking apart. It's definitely fringe science, but man, is it intriguing.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, right? We're really digging into the work of this researcher, John Gamache, who walks that line between hardcore science and just being open to the unexplained.
Right, and he's been on that alchemical science YouTube channel, and some of the experiments he talks about, you can even try them at home.
Yeah, it's like getting a peek into a world beyond, what we normally think is possible.
Yeah, and what's really cool about John is how he blends these two worlds. He's got this scientist's mind, really meticulous, but he's also open to the idea that there's way more to these things than we realize.
It's like imagine combining that analytical brain like, say, Nikola Tesla, but with this feeling, this intuition that there's a deeper order to everything. That's the vibe we're bringing to this deep dive.
And, the Hutchison effect itself, it's still debated in the scientific community, but what John's doing is making us think about these big concepts that have always been around. Subtle energies, resonant frequencies, maybe even how consciousness and the physical world are connected.
Yeah, it's about asking those what-if questions and just being open to the possibilities and maybe even, rekindling that sense of wonder we all have about the world. So John has this experiment, right? And it's so simple. It's almost like a magic trick. But the best part is you can actually try it at home. All you need is like two regular wooden blocks.
It's amazing how he can take something so ordinary, like wood blocks,
Yeah.
and use them to explore these really deep ideas.
Right, exactly. So, okay, picture this. You've got a block in each hand.
Okay.
Now, take the block in your right hand and rotate it clockwise, like a quarter turn at a time, keeping it upright. And at the same time, rotate the block in your left hand the same way, clockwise, quarter turn, but this time, keep it horizontal.
Like a clock face, almost.
Yeah, exactly, like a clock face. And this is where it gets really crazy. John says he actually feels this push and pull between the blocks when they're rotated like this, like they're connected by something you can't even see.
Wow. So is he saying the wood itself is creating some kind of force field?
Well, that's the thing. Wood isn't magnetic, right?
Yes.
So what's going on?
That's a good question. What does John think is happening?
So he thinks that by rotating the blocks, we might be tapping into some kind of energy field, these subtle energies that are all around us, but we usually don't notice.
It's like those blocks are acting like antennas or something, picking up on something we don't have the senses for.
Exactly. And get this, he even noticed that how strong this push and pull felt, it actually changed depending on what time of day it was. Time itself seemed to be playing a role.
Now, that is wild. So we're talking maybe cosmic energies, some kind of temporal effect we just don't fully grasp.
It's like these simple wood blocks are suddenly connected to, like, the rhythms of the entire universe. So remember how we were talking about time and how it might not be as straightforward as we think? Well, this next experiment, it might just make you look at your watch a little differently.
Yeah, this is where John's work gets really interesting. He starts looking at the work of Nikolai Kozyrev.
Kozyrev, right.
This guy was a Russian scientist, and he had this radical idea that time wasn't just a way to measure things, but an actual force, like a type of energy that's everywhere in the universe.
Okay, so John, he gives these two synchronized stopwatches to Jordan, the alchemical science host, at a conference. They're set to run perfectly in sync, right?
Yet.
But here's the thing. One of them starts running faster than the other.
Wait, seriously, how much faster are we talking?
It was subtle, but noticeable. And get this, John says he was actually able to influence the rate of the stopwatch, how it was moving through time, by messing with its weight.
Messing with its weight. How do you even do that without, physically changing the watch?
Exactly. And that's where it gets really wild. He claims he wasn't changing the physical weight, but rather exposing it to specific energy fields that then affected its temporal flow.
Okay, hold on. So we're talking about, like, changing the way an object experiences time by manipulating energy fields around it. This is getting into some serious science fiction territory.
I know, right? It sounds crazy, but think about Kozyrev's theory for a second. He's basically saying time isn't this passive thing that just marches forward. It's an active force that can be influenced, maybe even directed.
So like imagine instead of time being a straight line, it's more like a river.
Exactly. And what if, like Kozyrev suggested, we could, under the right conditions, create little ripples or currents in that river and actually affect how things move through it?
It's like we're not just along for the ride, we could actually steer the boat a little. So how does this all connect back to John's work with the stopwatches?
Well, it's still early days, right? But his experiments, even though they're seen as fringe science, they kind of hint at the possibilities that Kozyrev was
Mm.
talking about. Like, what if we really can nudge time, even just a tiny bit, with the right tools and understanding?
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing to even think about.
It really is. And, going back to what we've been discussing this whole time, it all comes down to keeping an open mind, challenging what we think we know. If simple things like wood blocks or a stopwatch can show us these weird, almost impossible effects, imagine what else might be out there waiting to be discovered. It makes you wonder, what else are we missing just because we haven't asked the right questions or looked at things in the right way? And that's what this deep dive is all about, opening up those possibilities and getting people to ask those what-if questions. Who knows what we might find if we just start looking?